The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. And by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff, in stock at CoolStuffInc.com. The Dice Tower, episode 570.
Reviews Spectacular.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Tom is on the road, so we shelved the top 10 list in favor of a whole bunch of reviews, including the sequel to Tigris and Euphrates. Plus, Jeff has a new source for randomness, and we power through some questions from the mailbag. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the Tom Vassal of board gaming, Tom Vassal.
I don't understand that one at all.
You can't argue with that one.
That's objective, not subjective.
What's wrong with that?
What if there's two Tom Vassals in board gaming?
I'm all about truth. You're the Tom Vassal of board gaming.
Fake truth. All right, folks, welcome to the show. I'm Tom Vassal.
Hi there, I'm Eric Summerer.
Tom Vassal. But anyhow, as you can hear, my audio is going to sound slightly differently. That's because I'm on the road while recording this one.
I should have done the Willie Nelson of board gaming. On the road again. There you go.
Anywho, that's because I'm dropping Melody off at college tomorrow, which will have already happened by the time you guys hear this. Eric can just play really sad music in the background, but yeah, so I'm here in Pensacola, Florida, which is where Melody's going to college, and so we got here earliest today, so of course I do what I do, and went around and checked out the board game stores. There was two of them, and I don't know. The one was the first one I went to, TBS Comic Shop, is really nice. It was a hole-in-the-wall comic shop when I was here 20 years ago, and I don't believe they had many, if any. I mean, they might have had a few board games at the time, but I wasn't really playing tons of board games. I was basically playing Warhammer 40K at that time. So it's a much nicer store. It's still very comics. I'm surprised. I would think comic stores are getting hurt by just like digital comics and things like that and graphic novels. But they had a lot of comics and they had a good selection of games. And so that worked out pretty well. It was a pretty nice store, nice bright lit. And then I went to Bobby's Hobby Shop, which was also here 20 years ago when I came. And it's like the antithesis of that store.
Oh.
Well, the guy at the front counter was friendly. You know, he wanted to know if I need help looking for anything, and he talked a little bit, but he didn't know anything about board games. He's a 40K guy, I could tell, because the guy came in and said, I'm interested in Warhammer 40K, and then he just was on.
Yeah.
But this was the kind of store where they just pile everything on the shelves. So, you know, it's kind of weird. On one hand, that annoys me. Like, how am I supposed to find anything in this store? You know, everything's just all over the place. Tons and tons and tons and tons of miniature stuff everywhere for Warhammer 40,000, all the Games Workshop stuff for the World War II one, Flames of War, to just terrain and paint and all that stuff everywhere. And then board games, but they were kind of mixed in, and you could find board games that, as far as I can tell, are out of print. You know, some of them, I'm not talking old games, but older games, like not from 2018. But there was also 2018 games there, too. So it was just like kind of a big mix of games all over the place. So I you know, that annoys me that it looks like that, but at the same time, it is kind of like you're an archaeologist. I'm here at the store, and I'm searching down looking for, you know, buried treasure. Look at this game, you know. And, you know, if you're looking for that out-of-print game, maybe that's the place to go.
Could be, yeah. It's always like a treasure hunt.
It also had really weird hours for a game store, I mean. It's open from like 9 to 6. And then on 2 days a week, it's open for gaming, late for gaming till 9 o'clock. That just doesn't seem like it would work in many situations. Like, if I'm going to gaming 6 to 9 doesn't seem long enough for me.
Yeah.
And closing at 6, who are they appealing to? Like, what gamers are coming in between 9 and 6? Wouldn't you go in the evening?
Yeah, after work. I guess you have that 1 hour window.
But again, I'm not going to say it's a bad store or anything. It just was, they were very, very different. One was like, hey, we're new, we're hip, we have all the stuff. The other one's like, hey, this harkens back to the old times. Either way, I don't know. I'm going to a gaming meetup on Saturday. I asked both stores if they had a game meetup, and they both were like, sure, you can kind of come when you want and stuff. And I was like, all right. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Huh. So the college doesn't have a bunch of stuff for you to do while you're there?
Well, I don't know. I wasn't planning to do anything. I was planning to drop Melody off.
And you're like, later, I have some games to play. No, I get it. It's fine.
Well, you know, when I went to college, I was like super eager for my parents to disappear.
Yeah, I hear you.
I was just anxious to go off my own. Now, I'm not saying Melody's like that, but I don't know what I would do other than stand around with the whole family and look a little like, hey, what do you want us to do?
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to help her move in and all that jazz, but then I'm sticking around a couple of days just in case something does come up, then I'm here.
Right. No, it makes sense. Might as well play something while you're waiting, too.
It would be foolish not to, sir. Foolish not to. You go to game stores when you travel. I don't want to hear this from you.
So our agenda today is a little bit different than our usual format.
There is no top 10.
What?
Yeah, I know. But you know what it was is sometimes I don't talk about as many games on the podcast because we review so many on the video channel. We review everything on the video channel. And it's easy to forget, well, I'm only talking about 3 games or so every 2 weeks.
Right.
But on the video channel, I'm talking about 24 games every 2 weeks.
Yes.
So that's 21 games not getting talked about. Now, I'm not saying we're talking about those today, and there's a lot of really, really, really bad games that I just decided to not talk about. There's very few games I'm going to talk about today. Let me go down and look through my list here. There's a few that I'm not going to say are great, but there's none of these horrible ones. I don't have time for that nonsense.
Gotcha.
You can go watch my reviews on them and see me rip those games up there.
Okay.
But we better get started because I am in a suite here in a room and my kids are all bursting around the seams. So we'll see. We won't talk about these long. So let's get started with one hot game. And by the way, these games are in kind of just random order. We're not starting from the hottest or the least hot. But this one is one that me and Z were talking about this game. Had this game came out 10 years ago, it would have blown everyone's minds.
I think
because it's
so.
from Dr. Rainer Knizia, and it's a sequel to Tigers and Euphrates called Yellow Yangtzee, or as the company is calling it, Y&Y.
Okay.
No, I'm serious. That's what they were calling it. They're like, oh yeah, we're selling copies of Y&Y and Y&Y. I'm like, what's Y&Y? Oh, Yellow Yangtzee. But Dr. Rainer Knizia's name does not hold the power that it did back in the 90s. And so, while this game certainly was popular at Gen Con, and it seemed like it sold out and did very well, it wasn't the blockbuster hit that I think it would have been in the 90s, when everybody was screaming and yelling about Tigers and Euphrates. Which is certainly one of the biggest and most influential games. I don't know if I want to say influential, but it's certainly a big game in board game, but there's very few games that are like it. Well, except for Y&Y now, of course.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to really get into Tigers and Euphrates for description purposes, but Yellow Yangtzee, you are going to be one of 4 different, I guess, clans back in the ancient days, and there's 2 rivers on the board, Tigers and Euphrates. I think there's, no, I'm sorry, Yellow and Yangtze. Sorry, I'm getting thematically incorrect here. But you're building these different civilizations by placing tiles on the board. You have 5 leaders of 5 different colors. And I'm just going to, I forget what they're all called, but there's black, green, blue, red, and yellow. And you're collecting cubes of those colors. At the end of the game, you will your final score is equal to the color cube you have the least of, except that yellow cubes are wild.
Yes.
So they can be added to any of the colors. So if I have 20 blacks, 20 greens, 10 reds, and 1 blue, my score is 1.
and you've lost.
Definitely. So you're trying not to do that. So on your turn, you have 2 actions, and the actions are pretty simple. You can place a leader on the board. You have these wooden discs that show your leaders in these 5 different colors, and they show your symbols. So, like, for example, one person's a bow and arrow. That's their symbol, so we know those apart. You can also place a tile. There's a big bag full of tiles that match these different colors, although the number of tiles in the bag for each color is vastly different.
Mm-hmm.
If you place a tile into a group of tiles that contains one of your leaders of the matching color, you will get a cube of that color. Actually, you'll give a cube to someone else if you put it in their kingdom, but you probably wouldn't do that. If you place 3 of these tiles, these are hexagonal tiles, together that they make a triangle, you can put down is it a temple? A castle?
A pagoda?
A pagoda? Yeah, sorry. A pagoda on top of those tiles, and whoever controls the leader that matches the color of that pagoda gets a cube of that color at the end of every single one of their turns. So controlling pagodas can get you a lot of cubes. And you can also redraw your hand of tiles if you don't like your tiles. You can basically blow a tile up on the board. I forget how you did that. Discard 2 of your tiles to do that, I think?
2 blue tiles will do it. It's a peasant's revolt.
Yeah, it's a peasant's revolt. So 2 blue tiles will blow up a tile on the board. Very rarely will you do that, but sometimes it can come in pretty critical because what's happening is these tiles are forming groups of kingdoms on the board. Now, the problem is you can only have 1 leader of each color per kingdom. So I might have my trader, the green one, in the kingdom, and Eric has the general, the black one, or I don't remember. Again, I forget what all the terminology is. So he has a black in one, and I have my green. They can be in the same kingdom. That's no problem. But if Eric decides to add his green leader to that same kingdom, then we have a problem.
Oh, yeah.
So there are 2 ways to handle these problems. One is a revolt, and that's when you add a leader to a kingdom that already has a leader of that color. And the other is war, and that's when you place a tile to connect 2 kingdoms that have leaders of the same color. Both are done similarly, but very different. They both use a different color. When you're at war, you're using black tiles, and when you're having a revolt, you're using red. No, it's the other way around.
Right.
Revolt is black tiles, war is red tiles. And if this sounds confusing, go watch my video review, because it's a lot easier to show you this than talk about it. But I will say that explaining the combat in this game is by far 90% of the rules. It really is. And I'm like, a revolt's different this way. When a revolt, you count the power of each leader and the number of temples that they're next to, or whatever, the black tiles that they're next to. And then you're playing black tiles, just you versus another person. In a war, you're going to count the number of red tiles in each kingdom, and then any player can add red tiles to either side, and then the winner has to lose tiles equal to the winner's. The winner has to lose red tiles equal to the loser's red tiles, but the loser has to lose all their red tiles, and blah 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 blah. It is confusing, but once you understand it, it's not that complex.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. You keep going until the bag runs out of tiles. There's a few other rules in the game. If you play a green tile, you can then, instead of drawing your tile randomly from the bag, you'll draw a face-up one next to the board. When you place blue tiles on the board, you can place as many as you want as one action. Black and red tiles are used in combat. If a leader is in front of you, they will give you bonuses and things like, when you build a pagoda, for example, you need to discard 2 green tiles. But if your green leader is in front of you, you only need to discard 1 green tile. If you're in a revolt and you're fighting, and your red leader is in front, your black leader is in front of you, they'll add +1 to your side. And those +1s and those special abilities of the leaders, that's new from Tigris and Euphrates. It's also different in that Tigris and Euphrates was squares, and this is now hexagons. Temples in Tigris and Euphrates were 2 colors. There are only 1 color pagodas here. There's actually quite a few differences, but if you know how to play one, you will know how to play the other.
Yes.
So before we jump into this, Eric, what is your opinion of the original Tigris and Euphrates?
Oh, I love Tigris and Euphrates. I want to say it's made my top 100, at least in the past editions. I don't know if it was in the most recent, but it's a terrific game and a great example of the classic Euro game. I love it.
I have my on and offs with Tigers and Euphrates. I like it a lot sometimes. Other times I don't like it because it seems like someone will have a bunch of tiles, like you're attacking them, and they have 5 red tiles and just wail upon you.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tigers and Euphrates, for me, was best as a 2-player game, although there's certainly disagreement on that, for sure. I don't know that if you like or dislike Tigers and Euphrates, that this one will change your mind.
Huh. Yeah.
There are some differences. I like some of the terminology better, like just one, I guess. Revolt and war is a lot easier than saying internal and external conflicts.
Yes.
It also looks 10 times better. Holy cow. I mean, Vincent Dutrait artwork, the whole thing just looks really, really nice.
Yes. The production of this is quite good. It's
especially
solid.
To the Mayfair edition.
Yes. Yeah, no, I got the German edition of Tigris and Euphrates. There was a lot of debate in my group because Tigris and Euphrates hits the table a lot in my group, and they were very interested in playing this. And one of the chief differences is how the majority of points seem to come from the pagodas in this game, as opposed to the wars, the external conflicts in Tigris and Euphrates were one of the ways to score a lot of points for a particular color. Because you used to, in a war in Tigris and Euphrates, if you won a major war, you removed all of the tiles of the offending color, and you'd get a point for each one of those removed tiles. Here, you're only going to get 1 point for a removed leader after a war. It's much more about control in this game and controlling those pagodas and trying to move them around the board and taking them away from people who are using them than it was in Tigris and Euphrates. And I think that's the biggest difference here, and something that requires some adjustment. My game group leader is like, I'm used to manipulating the wars to earn my points, and it's sort of hard to adjust to this new method.
You know what? That's the change I think I like the best, because those wars were the biggest swings of luck. Now that the wars aren't so powerful, I think the game is less lucky.
I don't disagree. I think it's a sort of a smoother game. I like how all of the different colors now have some sort of power. That green has the trading ability, and blue has that, the puking a bunch of tiles on the board. I managed to get several blue tiles in my or behind my screen for my first move, so I was able to establish a blue pagoda in turn 1, and was able to defend it for a good portion of the game, and then had a nice lead going into the mid game. So it's a very different game, even despite its similarities to Tigris and Euphrates. It feels different. I did enjoy it, though. I think this deserves a spot on the shelf next to T&E.
Well, I wouldn't go so far about that. I like Yellow Yangtzee a lot, especially more than Tigris and Euphrates. To me, there's no reason to own both of them. One thing about Yellow and Yangtze is the first word of the thing, too, is yellow. I like that there's a wild color there now. There was a wild color in Tigris and Euphrates, but there was this weird trading connecting two kingdoms, and then the one trader would get one of the cubes. And I'm glad they just streamlined that and said there's now yellow. And yellow is wild, which makes a yellow pagoda a crazily powerful thing that everybody wants to control.
Yes, you're fighting over it a lot. The destruction of tiles is easier in this version, too. In Tigris and Euphrates, everybody got 2 destruction tiles, and that was it. Whereas...
Well, how often do you destroy your games? We found that we don't do that as often. It's more of a, last resort destruction.
I was using it a lot to manipulate, because you can oust a leader that way. You can sort of set up a conflict or a war or a revolt to go more in your favor if you destroy something first. And especially if you have your blue leader off the board, you only need to get rid of 1 blue tile to destroy something, which is pretty cool. So yeah, it happened a lot in our game.
The one negative thing I would say about the changes for me was it's slightly more things to remember. We were constantly forgetting, you have that leader in front of you. That's +1.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that comes with time. But realize going into this, if you've never played the original game, this is a mean game. Yellow Yangtze is all about conflict in each other's faces. You are going to do anything you can to cut them off and cut the points. and you're going to feel like you're behind the whole game, and at the end you'll find out that scores are closer than you think, but it's really easy just to wail on people in this game. And, I mean, you have to. If you're not attacking, I mean, this is almost a war game. But I like it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure how highly I like it yet at this point, but it's certainly, I think it's an improvement. And if you've never played the original one, you need to try it because there's very few games that are like Yellow and Yangtze. So that's it?
Yeah. Thumbs up for me, too.
So if we talk that long about every game, this episode will never end.
We'll try and pick it up a little bit. So my next one to talk about is Spy Club. This was number 1 on my list of Gen Con releases. This is a cooperative game of sort of pattern management, hand management. You are kids trying to solve a mystery, and you have a bunch of cards that are double-sided. Some have the same color on both sides, some have different colors on both sides, and they all represent different clues to a mystery. And in one particular game of Spy Club, you're trying to get groupings of the same colors into the center of the table. So all 5 yellow cards will allow you to complete the yellow, which is, I think, the object of the mystery. And you do that for all 5 aspects of the case, and you have completed one game of Spy Club. The game is designed, though, to be played over a campaign, a mini campaign of 5 games. So say we finish up Spy Club and finish a round, and then we take one of those aspects that we discovered, say the game pieces, and we put that on a little pad of paper, and then we look up on a chart that says, well, if you logged the game pieces in game 1, for game 2 you need to look at this card in a campaign deck, which then adds rules, adds special powers, adds new ways to lose, new ways to win, other ways to manipulate the cards, and sort of causes the game to evolve. And then you complete game 2 and maybe discover a new aspect. You're going to score points as well. Even if you fail at finding all 5 aspects of the case, you still get points and continue the campaign, moving on. Your maximum score is 100 points after 5 games, and we are not going to score 100 points in our first campaign. But still, you are manipulating these cards, flipping them, sharing tokens with your teammates, and trying to get these cards into the center as efficiently as possible before you run out of time or before your suspect escapes. I have enjoyed this and am fascinated by the evolution of the campaign. We're sort of in the middle of our first campaign. The kids were more distracted than I had hoped when we sat down to play this. I was hoping they'd latch on immediately to the theme and, yes, okay, let's do this. My older child... Probably not, unless they're trying to deceive me all along. My older one said no, he wasn't interested in playing the second round. The younger child was interested once we told him there were abilities he could unlock. So there are some powers that can come up that if you achieve, say, getting 3 cards all the same color at once, then you can add this power that you get to keep for the entire campaign. He was all about that. That's all he wanted to do. And once he achieved that, he's like, I'm going to go do something else. So we had to play his character for the rest of the game. So I'm still holding out hope that they will still latch on to it. It was at, Grandma and Grandpa's house, so they were distracted with other things. I am fascinated by Spy Club still and am looking forward to getting more plays. There's a lot of those campaign cards to work through, a lot to explore in Spy Club.
I have not yet played this one, but I'm anxious to get it to the table, or to get it, period.
Yeah.
But since we're talking about kids' games, so I went through a gamut of, what's it called, the Census this week. I played Nyctophobia, which was about touch, right?
Nice.
You got to close. You're blind in the game essentially, and you're feeling around. I played a What's That Smell game from Target, which is about smelling horrific things, usually.
Oh, good. All right.
But here's one called The Hear Me's. Now, this is spelled Hearmees. And in this game, you have each player has like a board with a bunch of shapes on it, and one player draws a card that matches one of these shapes. And they're using a wooden dowel and like a big piece of Velcro. Mm-hmm. And they're scratching that shape onto the Velcro. So the other players are listening. They're not supposed to look, and you have like a shield to hide behind anyway. And they're trying to and then they all just put like a token on the thing they think it is. And there's some other rules to the game, but that's basically it. It's hard as all get out. Now, when there are dots, you can definitely hear the dots. But if there's, for me, telling the difference between a straight line and a curved line is hard. So you sit there and go, okay, I heard 4 straight lines, and I think that's 2 circles. I mean, you can use deductive reasoning to figure out it usually, but it's hard, and for kids, it's really hard. It's interesting, and I like it. It teaches, pushes listening, which, as we all know, kids are really good at, but they could use just a little bit more effort with. So I like it. It's from Haba Games. That's the Hear Me's.
Yeah, Suzanne talked about this on an episode that you weren't on, Tom, and it did sound very, very interesting. It's one I haven't actually seen. I've just gone off of your descriptions of it. It does sound neat, though. Speaking of kids' games, I got to play Restoration Games' latest release, Dinosaur Tea Party. I keep
getting so confused here. There's Dinosaur Tea Party, and then there's Dragon Tea Party.
That is true. Is it the Tea Dragon Society and Dinosaur
goodness.
Tea Party? Yes.
And one's by Restoration Games, and one's by Renegade Games, which does not clarify things much at all.
It is, yes. It's very confusing. This one is a retheming, rejiggering of a game called Who's It? A deduction game very similar to Guess Who? You have an array of dinosaurs on the table, and they have different attributes like stripes or polka dots, or some of them are eating or drinking, or they have a visible tail or visible teeth, all of these attributes, and they're laid out on the table. And then you have cards that represent all of those dinosaurs as well. Everyone is dealt one of those cards, and now you are that dinosaur. And your job is to guess the names of the other dinosaurs around the table. So on your turn, you can ask a yes or no question of one of the other dinosaurs at the table about one of the attributes. Oh, hello, my dear. Did I see you wearing a hat earlier today? And they will answer yes or no. And then you've got little tokens that you can put out about what answers have been given. So you sort of track what has been discussed already. And then based on the answers, if you get a yes answer, you may ask another question, either of that dinosaur or of another dinosaur. Or if you're really lucky and manage to figure it out, you can guess their name. If you successfully guess their name, you get a sugar cube. That is 1 victory point. And I think it's 3 victory points, and you win the game. That person gets a new dinosaur. You flip over the one that they just guessed. You know they're sort of out of play now. They get a new dinosaur, and they start over with a clean slate. Guess Who is a very apt comparison here. It's very similar in technique and questioning. It's certainly deeper than that, but not that much deeper. This is much more family weight, almost kids weight game. I played this with a bunch of adults, and they were not quite as engaged as I would have hoped they would be. Part of the fun, and they went all out with presentation here, saying you need to be very polite. When you ask a question, you have to politely ask the other dinosaur, the other player, these questions. There are special rules for some of the dinosaurs who are there's one that always lies. There's one that alternates yes and no answers. And those are they put an interesting monkey wrench into the system, because you're never quite sure if somebody's being truthful when they give their answers, or they're following one of these special rules. I enjoyed it, but it's a lot lighter than I expected it to be. I think it will be much more of a success with my kids than it was with my adult group. But still, Dinosaur Tea Party gets a lot of credit for its style.
Well, I think that's one thing we can say about Renegade Games in general, is their style is always good.
Yes, except this is Restoration Games.
Oh my goodness, I meant Restoration Games. All right. Okay, well, let's talk about a game that's tons of style, and that's the Edge Downfall. Have you seen this one?
Mm-mm.
Well, this company decided to bring back what we used to call coffin boxes from Fantasy Flight.
Okay.
It's this humongous box that came full of tons of grotesque style miniatures and lots of miniatures. It is essentially, it's designed by the same guy, Michael, who designed Hiroshima Hex. And the Edge Downfall has 6 different factions in it. It has 3 campaigns for each of the factions to fight another faction, a whole rule book for each of these, sticker sheets and boards, and I was like, wow, this is a big game. Then I played it. Hey, it's not so bad after all. The game itself plays very similarly to HeroScape. I mean, it's not quite the same thing, but I would say it's the same level of complexity and depth. You put a bunch of guys on the board, your opponent puts a bunch of guys on the board. You can take an active turn where you can activate one of your units, run it around and fight with it, or you can take a passive turn in which you kind of regenerate your stuff. And so you're going around trying to control these crystals and get more crystals so that you can use those to power up your abilities and use them, but most of the time you're just running around fighting the other person using dice. It's very, very quick, very simple. I was like, oh, so what are these campaign books? The campaign books start you with a few of your units, and you just play through a little at a time, some battles, and depending on the results of the battles, depends on the units you'll be able to get and cards, because you have you build your own deck in this game too, of cards that you're using, and the campaign uses stickers, but they have this like paper campaign map that you put the stickers on, and when you're done, you can just get another campaign map out and start over again. So it's not really legacy.
Huh.
It's just a nice way to keep track of the campaign in The Edge. The miniatures are huge and overly detailed, and the game is probably too nice, if that makes sense. I mean, too much, too big. I'm not a super fan of, again, even the good guys in this one. Like, I was running one faction, the good guys, who have the Angel of Death. That's one of the nicest big giant creatures in this game. So they're not as grotesque as, let's say, Kingdom Death Monster, but they're nothing I would want to wake up and see any of these people standing next to my bed.
Nice.
So, but don't be put off by just how big, and you're like, oh. But if you want to play, it gives you a ton of playthrough value, because if you buy this original box with these 6 factions, and you can play 2 of the factions against each other in a campaign, which I think is like 15 battles or so, and then when you're done with that, you can play through another one, 15, another. I mean, that's a ton of gameplay, and then you can just set up and just play any 2 factions against each other. So I like it. I mean, it's not amazing, but it's very, very good, and people who like miniatures and stuff, to me, it was just refreshing to play one of these big games that wasn't ultra complex for once. That's The Edge Downfall. Not your style, though, probably.
No, probably not.
All right, well, speaking of style, who has style? Jeff Engelstein has style.
Boy, howdy.
3, 2, 1, go.
It's time for Game Tech with Jeff Engelstein, where we find out how games really work.
When war games were first becoming popular in the 60s and 70s, it was not that easy to find opponents. We were not blessed at that time with the internet, which now makes it so easy to create and find communities of people to play with. Game stores would have bulletin boards where you could post looking for people. The General magazine from Avalon Hill had a whole Opponents Wanted section in the back. That's what made conventions even more special back then. The opportunity to actually get to play so many of the games you'd only tried solitaire against a real live opponent. One option for those times in between cons was play by mail. In a play by mail game, you would write the position of all the pieces, their moves and actions, and send it to your opponent. And the roots of play by mail actually go back hundreds of years to correspondence chess. People would mail chess moves back and forth to each other to play games with distant opponents. The earliest known correspondence chess game was in 1804 between 2 members of the Dutch army. Now, I played a few chess by mail games when I was in high school, and having the ability to carefully ponder your moves without worrying about your opponent becoming impatient or having to deal with a chess clock really changed the experience. In the 1960s, playing diplomacy by mail became popular. The requirements to send letters to the other players to negotiate also really changed the feel of the game from the intense face-to-face negotiations of playing in person. Now, unlike chess, diplomacy required a moderator to whom all moves were sent, who then resolved the turn and sent the results back to the players. Now, when war games started being played by mail, a new problem was introduced: dice. How could players roll dice for battles and trust their opponents? Well, there were many instances, and I participated in some of these, of people just recording what they rolled. For tournaments and more serious play, a system was needed that could be trusted by all players to give random results that could be checked and verified by everyone. The solution? The stock market. Back in this time, newspapers would print all the final stock prices for the New York Stock Exchange each day. When you sent out your move, you would list all the required die rolls and pick a date in the future for when they would be resolved. The players would look at the newspaper on that day, and starting with a particular stock and working downwards, would use the last digit of the stock price as their random numbers. If you're just looking for a number from 1 to 6, you just skip any stocks outside that range. So both players would have a common verifiable reference that they could use to check the random numbers. Having a common source of random numbers is actually really useful for a variety of things outside gaming. There are a lot of cryptographic applications, business uses like random selection for ticket sales, and it could even be used for things like the lottery or awarding visas. This would be great to have any time you want to go back later and verify that things were done fairly. Well, after several years of testing, one is going live soon. Run by the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, they've created what is called a random beacon. Every 60 seconds, a new set of random numbers is generated and posted to the internet. Now, this would be great for playing a game by mail. My opponent and I could agree that we would use the random numbers generated starting at 6 p.m. Eastern on August 16, 2018. And we could both go to the website and see the numbers generated for that exact time. So how do you know that these numbers aren't changed after the fact? If I go back and check a block of random numbers for a certain date and time months ago, how do I know that it's the same? The random beacon also includes a signature that links it to the previous block. So each minute, another link in the chain is created. If you wanted to change a link a month ago, you'd also need to change every link that comes after it. While not a concern for gamers, if this random beacon was going to be used for, say, a $500 million lottery, people might be concerned that the random numbers themselves could be manipulated, or people might be able to get advanced knowledge of what they were going to be. It is, after all, controlled by the U.S. government, so maybe the NSA has a way of backdooring and setting the random numbers to what they want to be for any given time. To combat this, several other countries are putting out their own random beacons. Brazil and Russia are both doing their own versions. And if you don't trust those beacons individually, Russia, for example, services are arising that actually take all the random beacons and combine them to create sort of a meta-random beacon for the new set of random values. So if you wanted to cheat in one of these aggregators, you'd need to be able to set the US, Russian, and Brazilian beacons all to the values you needed at the same minute. Now, nothing is ever foolproof, but it does start to become very unlikely. Now, the NIST random beacon page is live on the internet as a beta for now. If you just search for it, you can check it out and watch a whole new batch of randomness come up every minute. It's actually kind of hypnotic to watch. This is Jeff Engelstein with Game Tech.
You know, I saw something like this one time. I don't think it's the same thing, but this guy built this gigantic dice tower.
Yeah.
And it was like an automatic dice tower. The dice would fall down at the bottom and then somehow go up like this. They'd fall on this conveyor belt thing and move them, and it would go back up. I do not remember where I saw this. And at the bottom, when the dice landed, it would then read all the numbers.
Yes.
For true randomness, and then you could use these numbers for your war games and such.
I do remember this. I almost think that Jeff talked about it and then shared the video in our guild.
You mean like a long time ago?
Years ago, yes.
Yeah, that's probably where I saw it. You're right.
Yeah.
But that did stick with me, and the same thing sticks with me now. Are you kidding me? Just use a randomizer online and trust it. I know they're not truly random. I also don't care.
If you're talking about, like you said, like $500 million lotteries, I don't know why you do that, doing it off of a random number generator. But if you are, you want to know that those numbers are random. But I kind of like the Dice Tower idea better. That's pretty cool. I'm actually kind of disappointed in Jeff's segment here because when I saw the title, I thought it was about random bacon.
What?
And not a random
so
beacon.
That makes no sense.
I thought,
What's
maybe
random bacon? You go to the bacon buffet and you're like, I'll take the mystery bacon, please.
I'll take the mystery bacon. Maybe it's maple glazed. Maybe it's like a spice rub. Who knows? I'm interested in a random bacon.
Bacon is bacon. Yeah, I said that, bacon lovers. Anyhow, that's interesting to me that this whole randomization type thing and that people really get that much into it. And I can understand that people want that out there badly, but... yeah. Whew.
Let's get to some more games.
All right, so Dice Masters. Dice Masters is my next game I want to talk about. This is the new Warhammer 40K Dice Masters. So Dice Masters is no longer sold in collectible format. You now can buy a starter set, and then there's army packs. Now, the game itself plays fine. It plays almost identically to regular Dice Masters, and you can mix and match them. It has a new thing in here with, you can make range attacks, so you're kind of shooting at other dice and blowing them up. So when I attack someone, I can also maybe shoot at another one. It will trigger off all the ranged attacks, so that's kind of interesting. But it's mostly the same thing. I'm not a big fan of the two factions they put in the starter box. They're both boring to me. But the starter packs add the orcs and the wolves, space wolves. The original set comes with it's a bunch of nasty stuff, and all the dice look very similarly. However, they do have the hot dog problem.
The what?
Yeah, okay. Well, this is the hot dog problem. You know, you buy 8 hot dogs, but the buns come in packs of 10 or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
So, if you buy these little army packs, they give you all the cards you need, and then they give you 2 dice for each card. Almost 99% of every cards in Dice Masters, you can have a maximum of 4 dice.
Oh, yeah.
So if you want with these army packs, these little packs, you can buy a second one of each. Okay, no problem. That means the second one, you might as well just take those cards and throw them right in the garbage. But now you have 4 dice.
Okay.
In the big army starter boxes, there are 3 dice for each one. That's just insane. It's like they want people to get angry. So you're a completionist, so you buy one, and you're like, I need a 4th die, so you buy a second one, and you take only 1 die out of that. So the only way this works is if you can find 2 other friends, and you split a third one, a second one, between the 3 of you.
Right.
I can't see how anybody's going to be pleased about this.
Or you sell the remaining 2 online.
Yeah, right, but that's still more work. With when it was back as a collectible die game, you got a die with every card. So you might have a card that had only 1 die, but you could buy more packs and get more dice, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, this seems like a majorly bad move. And it's not just the Warhammer. They did it with the latest Avengers Infinity. I'm going to have to call them out every time on this. I like it, though. I don't know that I want to mix Warhammer 40,000 Dice Masters with Marvel Dice Masters. Having Spider-Man go up against a Dreadnought just doesn't seem thematically right, but you can if you want to. So
it would make a cool movie, though.
Well, we saw that movie already.
That's true.
If you don't like... Thor 2 is probably the least liked of all the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. But the very first sequence of the movie is essentially Warhammer 40,000. Armies and tanks and lasers, and it's not 40K, but it looks like that's how a 40K battle would be. Anyhow, that's Warhammer 40,000 Dice Masters.
Let's talk about a game where all the dice you need are already in the box. This is a new one from Tasty Minstrel Games. It's called Jungli-La. That's JUNGLI-LA, because I don't know how you could figure that out. This is it's sort of a push your luck progression game. You have a whole string of tiles of cards that you're going to work your way through to the end of a jungle path. All of these cards represent personalities that you can recruit if you get the right symbols, the right resources. You're going to get these resources through dice rolling, and it's the Yahtzee mechanism where you get to roll and then keep some dice and roll again and keep some dice. There are some symbols that will lock if you get, I think it's these scroll symbols. You're going to lock those dice. And then you get to cash in and get the resources that you've rolled. You can either get one of each of the different types of resources that you rolled, or you can get all of one type of resource that you rolled. So if you get a whole bunch of, what are the different resources? I forget exactly what they are now. But if you get a whole bunch of one that you really need, you can get all of those, or you can, spread things out and get one of each of them. Also, these scroll cards are very useful for manipulating dice, for adding more dice, for doing cool things to rule break. So you can only get one of those on a turn if you manage to roll 2 of those symbols. After you've done all this, you can, if you have the proper resources, claim the card that you're standing on, or you can move if you've got some movement symbols on your dice, move along the path, and maybe claim that card that you will then move to. You can also expand your capacity for holding the resources. You can it gets like getting an extra cart space, like in Istanbul. It's kind of like that. But the central dilemma here is, do I move slowly along the path and pick up several of these cards, which give me powers and abilities and extra dice and all sorts of stuff, or do I try and sprint down the path to get to the very end where there are treasure cards? And if I get there and there are still turns and players still moving along the path, I just keep drawing those treasure cards, which can be worth lots of points. Meanwhile, other people are getting points by claiming the cards along the way. Which way is better? I don't know. I've only had a chance to play once, but I was sort of merrily moving along the path. I did not come anywhere close to winning this one. It's fine. It's the art is cute. The dice rolling is interesting. It's a little confusing the way some of the symbols resolve. Sometimes you only need one of a symbol to get something. Sometimes you need two. Sometimes you can get multiples of a type, and sometimes you can't. It's a little hard to internalize that. There's a whole flow chart for what happens when you roll that you have to refer to a lot. So it's not quite as smooth as I'd like it to be, but it's also a quick dice rolling game, and those are usually fun. So it's sort of a middling thumbs up for Jungla from Tasty Minstrel Games.
All right. Yeah, I don't know. The name is not selling me on that.
Now, it doesn't roll off the tongue very well.
What's the size of this game?
Like physical?
Yeah,
I'd say
size.
it's maybe the size of a harbor box.
Yeah, okay. I'm just telling you, Tasty Minstrel is on fire with their big box games. Hit after hit after hit. But I'm still not sold on their smaller ones. All right. So, staying in the Warhammer universe, but now jumping to regular Warhammer Champions trading card game. This is a collectible card game. And it's based on Lightseeker's card game, which is also a collectible card game. And that's a very bright and cheerful universe. Warhammer Champions is not. Because Warhammer is just war. In this game, you have 4 Warhammer champions that you will be picking and building a deck around. And you will then, each of these champions will be summoning people to fight for them. Like in a lane, they'll be fighting usually the person directly opposite them. You're trying to hit it's kind of a weird sequence. You're trying to make your opponent's life go down to 0. So you're hitting your opponent as a whole. But these champions, and you can't really hurt the other champion, but you're casting spells and blocking each other. It's kind of a weird thematic disconnect I'm having with this game. I think the game is fine. I think it's definitely better than Lightseekers. But in this Champions game, you have these different treasures that you will get if you summon or do damage. Or each hero has some different things they need to do. And if they do 4 different things, they will get to open up a treasure, and the treasure will do some amazing thing. And so you're building a deck that's kind of based on how can I attack my opponent. Many of the cards you play will rotate, and as they rotate, they do different damage. Will this have legs? Oh, man, trading card games are hard these days. I mean, other than Magic and Pokemon, which, sidebar, Eric, let's come back to Pokemon in a bit.
Okay.
But other than Magic and Pokemon, most trading card games do not really take off. There's very few that have any kind of support behind them. So we'll see where this one goes. I'm not sold on the graphic design. The art is fine. The graphic design feels very dated. And also, the starter decks are fine, but how you build other decks, they don't really tell you. You have to go online to figure all that out. But you can scan all your cards and use them online, so there's a lot of good about this game. And the gameplay itself, I think, is pretty solid. I'm just not sure how much I want to play it. That's Warhammer Champions trading card game.
So a card game that has a slightly cheerier theme is Cat Lady from AEG. This is a card drafting game about cats. The object is to get a bunch of cats and feed all those cats because a fed cat is going to earn you points.
Feed the cats, tuppence a bag.
That's about right. You have a grid of cards, a 3x3 grid of these cards, and there are cats in there, there's food cards in there, there's costumes for your cats, there are toys for your cats, and on your turn you will grab 3 of these cards to either put into your hand or put in front of you if they're the cats. The only restriction is that there's a cat meeple that sits around the outside and is sort of looking at one of those rows or columns, and you can't take that row or column, but you can take any other row or column on the board. You will then replace those cards, and whatever row or column you took, that's where the cat meeple goes. So the new cards, the 3 new cards, can't be taken. If you take the cross piece, so if I've got like a row with the cat on it, I could take a column that includes one of those 3 cards, but I can't take all 3 of the new cards. So the cats need to be fed. There's 3 different types of food. If I get like a milk card, I exchange it for a milk cube that I can use to feed a cat that wants milk. It's pretty straightforward. Some of these cats have special powers or scoring abilities. So if you get lots of orange cats, you can get a cat that scores for more orange cats. You need to get costumes. If you have the most costumes, you get bonus points. If you don't have any costumes, you lose some points. There's sort of a set collection for the toys. If I get lots of unique toys, I get lots of points. If I have too much food at the end, so if I just like hoard all the food and I don't feed enough cats, well, those are minus points. But that's pretty close to the whole game. You go until you work your way through the deck. Once the deck is empty, I think you finish out the round. You total up the points, and that's about it. It's very straightforward, very cute. It's cartoony artwork with adorable cat names. My favorite was LeVar Burton. That's cute. And it was a big fit for I can hear you groaning. It was a good fit for my mom. My mom teaches a game class up in Maine where she lives with some senior citizens. And so she's on the lookout for these very simple, straightforward games. And she thought this was such a great fit, I left my copy with her. So here you go. I think you're going to play this a lot more than I am. It was almost too simple for me, not really my style of game, but for what it's doing, I think it does it very well. It's quick, it's cute, it's easy to grasp, easy to teach. The mechanisms are simple. It's a solid gateway game from AEG Cat Lady.
I actually agree. This is a very, very good game. I'm not a big fan of the art, which incidentally is done by the designer, but it's a good game and it works really well. All right, the last game I'm going to talk about here in this section is Ivion, which is a player versus player card combat style game. Yeah, another one of those.
Okay.
But this one has a ton of variety. You're going to pick one of 12 different specializations. Then each specialization, you can add 2 classes to it out of 6 classes. So you can mix these together. One of those classes has to match a color of your specialization. The other does not. You then add a few feats, and you have a deck. And then you just run around on this board and fight each other. The production of this game could use some nicety. It doesn't look very nice, frankly. It looks okay. But the gameplay itself is really well done. On your turn, you have some actions that you take, and most of those actions are going to be moving around the board, hitting your opponents, and playing cards. But a lot of times when you play cards, you are going to cause problems for your opponents. You might disarm them, or mute them, or slow them. Now that's done differently in different games, but this game does it really well. If I play slow 3 on you, you take a die and put 3 points of slowness on you. You can use actions or power to get rid of those points of slowness if you want to on your turn. But if you don't, you can't play any cards in your hand that have a slow marker on them. So most of the cards in the deck have those 3 markers on them. Some of them have more than one, which means if you are muted or slowed, you can't play this particular card. So it's constantly this, I'm going to do these negative statuses on you, and you're like, oh, that means I need to waste time getting rid of these statuses so I can play these cards. And really good cards will have more status markers on them, and therefore can only be played when you are not slowed, muted, or disarmed. I thought that system worked really, really well. It offers huge amounts of customization at the beginning. Biggest problem being, if it's your first time, you're like, which of these 12 specializations do I pick? Which 2 factions classes am I mixing in with this? Then when I do that, which cards of those do I pick? I don't know. It's going to take a while to get things started. The rule book gives you 2 decks that you can put together, but man, I think I would have had just 6 starter decks in the box and then said, hey, you can add more stuff later on. But still, there's some interesting things. I just wish the whole thing looked nicer. It's Ivion or Ivion or, I don't know, Ivion.
Yeah.
Oh, real quick, Pokemon.
Yes.
So my kids come in the house, and they're like, there's Pokemon pictures all over my walls now. I'm like, what? Pokemon? Is this Pokemon Go again? No, it's Pokemon the card game, which they learned from their neighbors.
Yes, you mentioned this a couple weeks ago.
Yes, well, it's gotten worse.
Okay.
And they're actually trying to play the game and just, fall down the hellish hole of addiction. So
okay.
I just bought them a pile.
Yeah.
I was like, guys, if you want, why aren't you coming to Dad to learn about games? I've had Pokemon. I can get you Pokemon. Just don't go to another dealer. So, yes, it's growing and expanding. We'll see what's happening. But at least it's an easy way to make them happy. This is what I don't understand, though. There's only so many Pokemon. How can they keep coming out with more sets?
Because they give them new attacks and abilities.
Yeah, I guess. That just seems samey to me, but whatever. All right, let's get to questions.
Let's do it.
Tom?
Tom.
Yeah, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
Have you ever accidentally eaten one of your game pieces? Do you ever make a fort out of game boxes?
How big can a miniature be before it's not really a miniature? And now, the Dice Tower will authoritatively, definitely, possibly, maybe, answer your questions.
Tom, which way to the game library?
Julie has a question about the game Zularetto. She says, I find it difficult to comprehend why a Spiel des Jahres winner that seems so universally beloved, accessible, and acclaimed is out of print. Any hunch or a gut instinct or information about whether this game will once again be produced and back on the market?
Well, I mean, I put this question in because this is going to be asked a lot, right? First of all, just because you're a Spiel des Jahres winner means nothing. They've done some real duds over the year. Try to find a copy of Niagara, or anyone who cares if there is a copy of Niagara. I know, some people like Niagara. Now, you did pick one that was very popular. But the fact is that there are 5,000-6,000 new games coming out every year. To bring back an older game is tough. People will be like, I already have that. I've already played it. Or, I haven't played it before, but does it stand up against today's games? Will this one come back in print at some point as a 10th anniversary edition or 20th? Sure. I'm sure it will. It's going to happen, but that's why. You can't. Not every game can be in print at one time, and I guess I'm kind of surprised that people don't understand that. I mean, this happens all the time. Why is this game out of print? Because your game store cannot literally have 20,000 different games on their shelves. They have to pick and choose which games. All game stores have to do that.
And the publisher has to make a decision as to what they're going to keep in stock and what they're going to spend their resources on, and they have to weigh a new release that has a brand new market with something that's got several years on it that may have saturated its market. That's a tough decision to make. They can't print every game.
Yeah. So that's all. No big deal.
But I bet you can find a copy out there. I mean, there are lots of copies of Zularetto out there. They have to be available.
All right, the next questions are from Ron. Ron says he was intrigued by the different people we had at our Gen Con show giving updates, and he liked that. But he noticed that most companies are currently having their games printed in China. Is this strictly a cost issue? It would seem like shipping costs would offset any savings on labor and materials. Are those costs so much lower than having games made in North America? Just as a quick answer to that question, yes. And it's not so much that they're cheaper than having them made in America, but the quality that you get for price, there's almost no companies in America that can match that. But we'll come back to that. Then he talks about if the tariffs go into effect, will this affect game companies? I don't think it will affect them too much, but I don't know. So we'll have to figure this out. Will this cause more people to use North American or European printers? A lot of companies already use European printers anyway. You just don't always hear about it. Then finally, if a game company would announce, Ron says, that they're going to use North American printers exclusively, how do you think that publicity would affect sales in a positive and or negative way? Well, I can tell you this. There are some companies that have done this. Rio Grande definitely does do this.
Yep.
And you can tell because their game components suck.
I can't disagree. I can't. The difference between original Dominion cards and the newer printing of Dominion is noticeable.
Yeah, but if you... I'm not even talking Dominion because that's their cash cow. I'm talking about every other game they do. You open up the box and you're like, are you kidding me? And then they put on the front this made in America. I'm like, look, that's like, don't be proud of that. Hide that. Put it on the back of the box. Don't brag about it unless it really is that much better. And I don't get it. I'm not here to debate whether things should be printed in America versus outsourcing them overseas. There's strong opinions on it across the board. I can just say, and this is not a subjective thing, the game quality from China and Germany is objectively better than American printings 10-1. It's not... The only one that America has caught up to is sometimes just card games. Except that some of these printers now actually have... Some of the big publishers actually have some presses and stuff in America. So
yes.
Cartamundi has a factory in America for sure, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see more factories move to America. So it's all going to be blurred anyway with our globalization.
Right.
But
I am interested to know why. Like, what is it? Just an experience thing that the German printers and the Chinese printers have more experience with more board game projects, and U.S. printers are maybe more in other areas of printing? Why is it that we can't that the U.S. printers can't match the quality level? That's what seems fascinating to me.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know why that is. You would think there would be like some high-end shop. I'm not even saying that they have to be cheap, right? But just like, yeah, this is good quality. But I'm telling you, whenever a company brags about only making their games in America, I always think, yep, well then they probably aren't very good. And that's no knock against America or other countries. It's just fact. Someone show me a game that's made in America that's stellar. It's just not there. Maybe that will change as time goes by, but I don't think announcing your game will be made in America will really sell that many more copies. You might have some people, but you know what the fact of the matter is? I found that when it comes to this sort of thing, regardless of people's opinions across the board, they're usually hypocrites. They just want a nice game, and they don't really care where it came from or how it got to their house.
So Eric, spelled E-R-I-C-K, has 3 young boys, ages 2, 5, and 7. He's been playing some games with them. Some games go over really well, like Labyrinth or Rhino Hero, but for others, his kids can't seem to get past the toy factor of the components, and they just want to play with the pieces like toys, many times to the destruction of the game. I am not sure if I should work hard to ensure they're using the pieces to play the rules of the game as designed, or let them have fun for fun's sake and hope they want to learn the rules of the game at some point. Do you let your kids play with games like toys or make them stick to the rules? I know I had this issue when my son was maybe 3 or 4, and he really didn't want to play with anything by any rules. He'd love to explore the components, and yeah, I mean, if they're destroying things, then that's a separate issue. But I sort of went with, if you're being careful, you can play with it, you can make up your own rules. I'm not going to force you to play it by the printed rules until you're ready to handle that. The 7-year-old might be, I don't know, it could be just the way that they play together. Every child's going to be different and their temperament's going to be different. I say, yeah, let them play with it. They're meant to be played with, but as long as they're careful, that's a separate issue, being destructive with the components. But yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I'm going to agree here. I really think if they're toys, let them play with them. My kids play with my Hero Escape miniatures. Sometimes I'll just open up a box and let my son play with some of the toys. Some of these games have really cool toys in them. Just make sure they put them away then, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I never want games to be like this hollowed thing. It really bugs me. And again, I'm getting all like opinionated this episode. It really bugs me when I go to someone's house and they have like their walls lined with toys, like in the boxes. I've been watching that Netflix series, the Toys That Made Us.
Toys That Made Us, yeah.
Right. And I see these people who have these houses full of toys. And the one Star Wars guy, I loved his house because he was like, yeah, I have all these toys and people get annoyed to pick them up, but these were made to be played with. And I was like, yes, they were made to be played with. And it's mind-boggling when you go to someone's house and it's full of shrink-wrapped toys. And it's like, you just like go in there and bask in how shiny things look. Let people play with them. Toys were meant to be played with.
Yeah.
Yes, let them play with toys.
Yes, indeed. My kids, I don't think they've actually played HeroScape by the rules yet. They just play with them.
Alrighty, well, let's get to some more reviews. Alright, here we go. This is our last set of reviews, so we're going to try to be super fast with these and get these in as quickly as we can. Are you ready?
Sure. I think we can do it, yes.
Alright, here we go. First, Burning Rome. Burning Rome is a two-player game about Rome versus Carthage versus two other groups of people. You build a little deck of cards. You fight back and forth with these cards, putting them in three columns and comparing attacks and defenses. It's really, really simple. It's okay. The game doesn't blow my mind. It's okay. But what I really kind of throws it in the pile where I'm not going to really like to play it very often is because like every Roman general has the exact same artwork. Every Carthage general has the same artwork. They use the artwork a lot the same. And I don't know. I want some differentiation between my units. So Burning Rome, meh for me.
Okay. Suzanne was meh on Lowlands last week when she reviewed it in extensive format on the show. I just wanted to give a quick counterpoint saying I got to play it and enjoyed it more than she did. One of the central things in this game, it's a farming game. You're building your farm and building buildings and collecting sheep and breeding them and stuff. And one of the things that you have to contribute to this dike, this wall that keeps the rising floodwaters away. And the more you contribute, the more rewards you get along this track. But there's also sort of like the central issue in Amun-Re, where you are contributing to the sacrifices, and that gives you rewards, or you could not do that, and that works to a different strategy. This is similar in that if the floodwaters crash through too often, then the sheep are worth more because they're more rare. So if you have a sheep strategy, you might want those floodwaters to come in a little bit and kill some sheep so that your sheep are worth more. Or you build this wall really, really big, and that increases the point values of how far you are along this track that you get to move along when you build the wall. I found that very interesting. Suzanne was not a fan, but I found it really cool. This one's fun. I enjoyed Lowlands a lot.
I agree. I think the interaction in Lowlands is fantastic. Next is Empires of the Void 2, which is a sequel to the first one. It's not the same game revamped. In this one, you have your own little empire in Void. No, okay, you're in a space area. Tons of customization in this game. The planets will be different spots every turn. The cards are going to be different every time. You take an action, everyone else repeats an action, a la Glory to Rome and games like that. And you're moving around, spreading. There's some combat, but not a ton. It's not really a 4X game, I don't think. But it is a game that lets you kind of do a lot of cool actions. And right when the game gets really popping, it ends, I think, at a very good moment. I like it very much. Empires of the Void 2.
I still need to try this one. An older game next for me is Desperados. This is from Eagle Griffin. It's from
Wow.
Exactly. It's Reiner Knizia. It's designed as a partnership game, so you've got your partner across the table. You're trying to earn points by playing these gold, silver, and copper cards into mines. So you have to play a mine to the table, and then you can play gold and silver and copper into those mines. There are also Desperado cards that you can then try and take over your opponent's mines. That triggers sort of a fight round. So if I play a 6 Desperado on a mine, then you play a 9, and then my partner plays a 5, and now if your partner can't throw anything else into that mine, now we win the mine, and any cards that are on it, they're now ours until you play a close mine card, and that closes the mine, you score points. There's sort of similar to Lost Cities. You can play like a doubler that then doubles all the cards that follow in that mine, and you're trying to score, I think, 60 points or something in order to win the round and the game with your partner. It was okay, but I wasn't really engaged with it. I think it's a little shallow, and we were done after one round, even though nobody had actually won the 60 points. So that's Desperados from Eagle Griffin.
All right, Smash Up. Oops, You Did It Again is the newest expansion for Smash Up, which adds cowboys, Vikings, ancient Egyptians, and samurai. I really like the different cards that are in. I like the samurai faction a lot. I like the Viking faction. I think I like the Viking faction the best, actually. The cowboys do duels, which is neat. The Egyptians bring people back from the dead, or buried cards, which can bring people back from the dead. That's cool. I think I like the Vikings because they can bring back other people's cards and use them in their own deck, which is something I love. Also, there's the bigger, geekier box, which really shouldn't have been made, considering they already made the big, geeky box, but this one is better than the first one and actually has a rule book which has everything in it, so I really like it. Unfortunately, it's one of those things like, why'd you make the first one? But there you go. Smash Up stuff.
Rajas of the Ganges is a neat...
I love this game.
It's a dice manipulation, worker placement. You've got all these different dice in, I think, 4 different colors. You only have so much storage for these dice. Sometimes high values are good, sometimes low values are good. You can do all sorts of stuff with them. You can trade in 1 die for 2 of a different die, and sometimes you really need a particular color to make things happen. I enjoy this style of game. There's sort of races on certain tracks to get bonuses there's a lot to do here. My only complaint is that the board is very, very busy and cluttered. There's very little real estate left on here, and sometimes it's not always easy to see where you can place everything. You have to sort of remember, oh yeah, that corner of the board is a place I can go to. But it's tense. It's interesting. It's thinky. It's cool. Rajas of the Ganges gets a thumbs up.
Yeah, this is one that I really liked when it first came out, and my liking of it goes up more and more and more. You will see more about it later. All right, where am I at? Symphony number 9. This is about Beethoven and all his fellow music creators, and in this game, you are a patron of them. Not Patreon, but a patron, where you are going to support the different ones, and you pick which ones you're going to support, and then you will bid and hopefully have their music show up in the big concert to score you points back. A lot of little things going on, but it's a fairly small game that feels bigger than it is. In fact, it probably should have a bigger box. But I like it. Nothing really that new in the game. It's your standard Euro game stuff. But I like the theming, and I think that pushes it over the edge into goodness for me. Symphony number 9.
Yes, and thank you to all of the people who informed me that the last time you mentioned this game and I went, bum, 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 bum. That's Symphony number 5. I've got it, thank you. I should have sang the Ode to Joy. I apologize.
Yes, I knew that when you said it.
Yeah. Mansions of Madness, 2nd edition. I finally got to play this thanks to some friends at Dice Tower Con. This game is fun. The narration, the presentation using the app, the surprise as you explore. You don't know what's behind that door. It really feels like an adventure. The only thing that holds me back is I'm not a huge fan of the Cthulhu theme. If they took this system with something like a space theme, I would be all over this game. But still, it is a very well done game, a terrific adventure, storytelling experience. I am a big fan. Just something other than Cthulhu, please? I don't want any cultists. Mansions of Madness.
Yeah, I'm getting a little worn out on that myself. All right, where am I? Newton. Hey, this is the new Simone Luciani game from Cool Mini or Not that looks boring as all get out. I mean, the board is muddled gray. Basically, in this game, you have 6 rounds, and each round you play 5 cards. You're going to play a card and do the action on that card equal to the number of symbols that shows up in your queue of cards already. And most of these are moving different things on tracks and scoring points for them. Yes, it feels very much like Stefan Feld was involved with the making of this game, because it's point salad, baby. But it is a juicy, delicious point salad. I really like the fact that you can't do everything. There's a lot of good things to do. I just wish the game looked a little nicer. That's Newton from Simon.
Juicy, delicious point salad. Next up for me is the Quacks of Quedlinburg, or I guess it was still the German version, so Die Quacksalber von Quedlinburg. It's a game about making potions, and it's got a push your luck element. You're building a bag full of different potion ingredients, and you're trying to work your way around this spiral track on your turn. You're pulling tokens from your bag and moving along this track, but if you draw too many of a particular type of token, the potion explodes. So you have to go and move and use special abilities of the things you draw and then stop. And then you get to collect all sorts of stuff, buy more things for your bag, and make your system a little bit better and increase your chances of not exploding in future rounds. But if you push too far, your potion explodes and you are you get a few things, but not nearly as much as you would if you didn't explode. I like it a lot. I think North Star really lucked out with having the Kennerspiel des Jahres winner, and I think the Quacks of Quedlinburg, which is the title they've settled on, is going to be a big hit when it's available in English. Very happy with this one.
I want to play this one. All right, jumping down to dark.net. This is someone who said, hey, I like Settlers of Catan. I want to make this game set in the near cyberpunk future, but take out the trading part of the game and add in an economic game instead. So in this game, you roll dice, which will give you cubes, red, green, yellow, and blue cubes, based on a little array you have in front of you. You can spend these cubes and buy things that will get you more cubes and buy more areas that give you more cubes, just like Catan, actually. But then you can also buy and sell the cubes for money on the market and use that money to do a few other things like an economic game. Catan is a better game, honestly. This is like, I don't know, it's going to be compared to Catan no matter what they can do, and it's just not as good. That's dark.net.
I finally got to play the Buffy the Vampire Slayer version of Legendary. This was a gift.
I put mine on the get rid of pile, and then
really?
He said, but Eric likes it, and I said, I don't care!
Wow.
That was the exact transcript of the conversation.
Okay. This was a very kind gift from a listener at Origins, and I finally got to play it. This is much like many of the other Legendary systems. The big differences here are that there is a dark light track that has 3 steps in the light and 3 steps in the dark, and some cards are dependent on whether you're in the dark or the light side of that push-pull. It's a tug of war, basically. And cards will manipulate where you are there. They may move at several spaces. It may jump back and forth. If you go too far toward the dark, the big bad gets to do things, which are usually pretty nasty, and then it sort of resets. And if you go too far, not too far, but if you go far enough in the light side, you get a bonus of these focus tokens that can be used for either recruit points or for attack points in a future turn. You can sort of save them up from round to round. But other than that, it's very similar to any of the other legendaries. You're trying to defeat the big bad a certain number of times. There's a scheme and a scheme twist. Sometimes, though, those schemes are related to the dark light track. The one that we played was when a scheme twist came up, if you're on the dark side of that push-pull, bad things happen. It sort of gives a 1 victory point for the bad guys, and if that happens 4 times, you've lost. So we had to really work to keep things on the light side as often as possible so that when one of those cards came up, we didn't get one of those points against us. I love the theme. There's no surprise there. I think it's a solid entry into Legendary. I do still wish it was Legendary Encounters, which would be straightforward co-op with the coordinate cards and just more of a team. They have this little blurb in the book about how the theme, characters in the Buffyverse are not always as straightforward as they seem, and maybe they have their own agendas, so maybe you don't want to play as cooperatively, but I still wish it was Encounters. That's my only niggly reservation, but Buffy Legendary is staying on the shelf for me.
I always play Legendary straight co-op. I did too. That rule.
But then there are some characters that are going to play, in a way that they get an advantage by taking cards away from people's score piles and stuff. This happens in Marvel too. So, like Deadpool will steal points from the other players, which if you're playing fully cooperatively is a weird thing.
Good point. Good point. All right. Well, I get rid of those characters in Marvel Legendary. I don't use them. All right, let's see. We're at War Chest. This is a poker chip abstract strategy game from AEG. It comes with really beautiful, heavy poker chips. And it's a bag-building abstract strategy game. So you have these 3 or 4 units, depending on whether you're playing a 2 or 4-player game. You can have 1 unit of each type on the board at any point in time. They're running around, controlling different spots on the board. And you will be pulling chips from a bag and using those chips to move your person, make them bigger and tougher. But the bigger and tougher you make them, the less chips you have in your bag that will make them work. Or you can spend a chip to throw another chip of one of those types in the bag. Each of these types have different special abilities, like cavalry might move faster. Archers can shoot from a distance to attack other pieces. It's really well done. Like, this is almost Duke level of goodness for an abstract strategy. And it's pretty as all get out. And that is War Chest.
Yeah, I got to look at this. I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but it looked really neat. And that system of using the same tokens to activate your units as actually represent your units is kind of neat. So
yeah, it's really well done. It also means the game will come to a close because when your chips get attacked, the chips come out of the game. They go away.
Yeah, you don't get them back. Last one for me is Rise of Tribes. This is from Breaking Games. It's, I guess, an early civilization game, resource management game. You've got a map with hex tiles, and you've got your guys on there, and they're collecting resources. But the primary mechanism is this dice rolling thing. You roll these dice, and the dice can be blank. They can have a moon on them. They can have a sun on them. And then you'll place these onto your 4 actions. One is add more guys to the board. You can collect resources. You can move those folks. And you can draw some goal cards that'll earn you points throughout the course of the game. But where you place these on the board, you're going to place them amongst other groupings of dice. So there will be 3 dice on these actions already. You'll slide them down and replace one of those dice. And so then you'll be left with an assortment of symbols. If you have 2 moons out of the 3 dice, then your power is less. Your action's going to be less powerful when you activate that. So instead of getting 3 new guys on the board, I'll only get 2 if I have 2 moons on there. But if I have 2 suns, at least 2 suns on there, then I get a more powerful action. And that, I think, is a very interesting aspect to this game where sometimes you're leaving. If I power up one of these actions too heavily, my opponent can do it with superpower as well. But if I make sure that a whole bunch of moons are still on like the move space, it means that my opponent can't maneuver toward me very easily on that turn because I've managed to keep those moons on that action space. I found that pretty neat. It plays very quickly. You got all these resources. You're turning them into villages and buying tech and those goal cards, and it's a race to 15 points. I have played the basic game, not the advanced game, so I don't know how much that playtime changes. It adds like new tiles and some leader abilities and stuff like that. My only complaint with this copy is that the dice were not the best quality. Several of them are chipped and sort of pitted. Sort of a weird component issue. Other than that, though, I'm pretty happy with Rise of Tribes, and I'm looking forward to playing it again.
Cool. And then the last game I have here on the list is Wakening Lair. This is a dungeon crawl card game from
Rather Dashing?
From Rather Dashing Games, which is, if you haven't heard, Rather Dashing Games was recently bought up by Catalyst Games. So they're like the same company now.
Interesting.
Anyway, Wakening Lair is this very simple dungeon crawl where you will be walking down this straight line of cards and flipping over monsters that you have to fight with an interesting combat dice system, and you'll get weapons, and then eventually a big bad monster wakes up at the end, and he starts stomping towards the end, and you have to blow him up before he gets there. The big bad monster is different each game. Well, I mean, there's like 6 of them. And it's some of the creatures have special abilities, but it's, for the most part, very, very, very straightforward and simple. And sometimes it's just nice to play a cooperative game that's not ultra complex. I like it. It takes Dungeon Crawl down to a very, very simple concept that's Wakening Lair.
I was this close to picking this up at Origins, but I did get the demo. Got to see these boss cards that you reveal at the end of the dungeon that have the multi-layered card that has sort of divots for cubes to go in, and how they each have different personalities. There's an arachnid that you have to attack the legs, and I can't think of any of the others, but they all have special rules about where you have to attack them and how they behave. And I thought that was really cool. I thought it would be a big hit with my kids. How young were the players when you played this, Tom?
I played this with adults. I haven't actually played it with kids.
Oh,
okay. But I think it could work with kids.
It seemed like a good fit, but I ended up not ultimately purchasing it. I think I ran out of luggage space at Origins.
It is a bigger game. It's fatter, at least, anyway. Well, that's it. We reviewed a lot of games in this episode, folks. Don't worry, for those who want top 10s, they're coming back. And don't forget, you can always vote on our top 10s. Go online and vote for that stuff. Now, actually, I think if you get on pretty quick, you can also vote for the People's Choice Top 100 Games of All Time.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, so that would be fun. So you get to go vote on these things and pick your favorite games. Those are always fantastic and worthwhile checking out.
Very, very cool. So in the next couple of weeks, we're going to mix things up a little bit. I know Mandy and I are going to do an episode at Grand Con, and I think you and Suzanne should be doing an episode together.
That's right. Well, we'll see what comes up. I haven't even kept track of all that. There's just so much going on. I'm still sad.
Well, I hope you have a good rest of your weekend, Tom.
I look forward to it. Folks, sorry about the quality. We'll work on getting the mic back to normal next week. Just one of the things of traveling, but we want to make sure we got the podcast recorded as normal. Alrighty, well, that's it from me. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Eric Summerer.
And, sign up for Dice Tower West. And you've been listening to the Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode number 570 was recorded on August 23rd, 2018. Mandy and Suzanne join you next week, and in 2 weeks, Tom and I are back with a new Top 10 list. Support for this podcast comes from listeners like you. Thank you for spreading the word. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. Find out more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with production assistance from Itai Perez, Derek Porter, and Rob Seary. Our theme was composed by Timothy Pinkham. Alternate definitions for claustrophobia provided by Isle of Skye. And hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at CoolStuffInc.com. We love feedback. Visit the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, email us at Dicetower@gmail.com, or follow us on Facebook. And of course, you can find more from the Dice Tower Network, including the Out of Game Podcast, Board Game Design Lab, the D6 Generation, the Family Gamers, Blue Peg, Pink Peg, the Portal Gaming Podcast, Every Night is Game Night, and Board Game Breakfast at DicetowerNetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. So you could maybe hide as the mascot of Melody's school, and then you could keep an eye on her and cheer for various sporting events.
I've always wanted to be a mascot, and I've never been able to be one because the outfits are always too small for me.
Oh yeah. Well, then so you have to petition them to change their mascot to a cardinal, and you already have that costume.
You want me to scare everybody?